What's good? We're back in this thing. Today we're going to be going over how Bennett did these 3D clone freeze frames in the Glaive 1984 music video. Super fire. I got the absolute sauce on how to do this. It's actually pretty simple. The video is going to be really quick, so be sure to drop a like, drop a comment, and subscribe if you're not already. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers, so go ahead and do that. Share with a friend. It'd be greatly appreciated. Before we get into the video, be sure to follow me on all social medias. I'll have them linked down below: Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, all the social medias. Join the Discord. We actually have a contest going on right now, a music video editing contest for $1,000 total prize pool, some really dope footage. So if you want to practice editing and also have a chance to win some money and the official video on my channel, I'll have the contest link down below in the description as well. Also, if you want to level up your music video editing game and support the channel at the same time, you can check out my website down below, briandelmata.com, and check out my packs and presets. It'll help you get some really cool looks and support the channel at the same time, keeping me uploading consistently and dropping all this heat on these music videos. But yeah, that's enough talking for right now. Let's get into the video and break down this 3D clone effect. All right, so now that we're in After Effects, I'm going to be showing you the effect we're going over. It's this clone where like Glaive hops into each of these freeze frame clones. They look really good, and I think it's a really cool effect. It's actually pretty simple. That last clone was actually mine. All the other ones were done by Cole. And if you're planning on going for this effect, I'd practice shooting in a way you can see that he like directed Glaive to walk to the left, to the right, to the left, so he can kind of hop into those clones. So it is good to pre-plan the footage a little bit. He is walking backwards, but it is really smooth, so he's like using some kind of gimbal or Steadicam, which definitely helps with the motion tracking. So keep all those in mind. If you want to follow along with this project and kind of do the same effects that I did, I'll have the project files linked down below for all Patreon supporters. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and tap in. But yeah, let's go ahead and break down this effect and kind of show you how I made this last clone and where he hops in. All right, so once you've picked out the clip that you want, I went ahead and removed that last clone that we had here so we can go ahead and add it back in. But like I said, I would recommend just having some smooth footage and kind of have your subject do some distinct things to kind of make it pop a little bit more as an effect overall. But you can go ahead and do this to probably footage you already have. It might just not look as good or it doesn't really come off as planned, but you can still definitely do it on some footage. So let's go ahead and just find a spot where we kind of want him to, hop back into his clone. So I think that's kind of why he had him do like specific movements kind of at certain times. You can see he's kind of just like flaring around his body a lot. And I think that helps with the overall effect. So let's go ahead and just find a spot. Maybe right as he's about to come down. So like right there. Let's go ahead and do that. And then what you're going to want to do is duplicate your layer by clicking Control-D. And that's just going to make a duplicate of the exact same layer. And then after that, if you're on the frame that you want, go ahead and right click, go to Time, and then Freeze Frame. What that's going to do is just make the frame frozen throughout the whole thing. So it's just like basically a screenshot. And then go to the pen tool and mask out your subject. The better job you do, the better the effect's going to look. Footage we have here is a little bit blurry because I downloaded it off YouTube, but assuming you have some good footage, it will be a lot easier to mask out. So again, just going through and masking out all of the subject here, going a little quick just for the tutorial. So keep that in mind. Whenever I'm rotoscoping or masking, I always do say spend as much time as you want on it, because the better the mask is, the better the effect's going to be sold. So definitely keep that in mind. And just like that, we have Glaive masked out. So if you go ahead and turn off that background layer, you can see we have a still image of Glaive in this position. So let's go ahead and turn back on that background layer and then actually cut it to right where the frame took place. So wherever you added that freeze frame, cut it to that, because that's when he's going to hop back in. Now you can see when you play it, obviously it's not motion tracked or anything, but he does hop back into that freeze frame. And then let's also go ahead and play around with the mask settings. So open up this down here and go to the mask settings and maybe feather it just a little bit, like 3 pixels. And then I'm going to do the mask expansion like -1. And that way the mask should look a little bit better around the edges. And then what we need to do is 3D track our video layer. That way we can go ahead and track in this freeze frame and make it look like it's in the same spot the whole entire time. So to do that, go ahead and go to your right hand side of your toolbar down here and go to Tracker. And if you don't see that, go ahead up to where it says Window, then go ahead and locate where it says Tracker and click that, make sure it's checked, and it should pop up somewhere on your screen. Then making sure you're selected on your video layer, go to Track Camera, and then it's going to go to Analyzing in Background, step 1 of 2. And then it should take a few minutes depending on how long your clip is, what the frame rate is, the resolution, all that stuff goes into play. But it's only looks like it's going to take me another 15 seconds, so I'll get back to you once that's done. Then after it does that, it'll say solving, and it should take a few more seconds as well. And then you'll get these points that you can see, all these different points. If you can't see them that well, you can go ahead and go to where it says track point size and bring it up, and it should make it a little bit more visible. I'm gonna go ahead and just make it a little bit more visible so you guys can see. And then all you need to do is really select a plane where it's motion tracked to the floor, or really whatever. You just got to find a plane that you think would make sense. So you can see how this disc that pops up almost matches like the floor's angle. Unfortunately, since Cole already went through and added these freeze frames, it does make it hard for me to find a track point on the ground because the freeze frames are in the way. So I think right here is our best bet. And I'm going to right click and go to create solid and camera. And then it's going to make a solid. You can see if you go ahead and play it, it's like this blue bar on the ground. And if that looks like it's kind of there in place and it makes sense, obviously it's going behind the freeze frames and stuff. So it's going to look a little bit different. But if it's not shaking around a lot when you're going through this, you've probably chose a pretty good spot and you're most likely safe to go ahead and add your freeze frame to that. So instead of that blue square, we want Glaive to be motion tracked into spot. So let's go ahead and delete that track solid one and then go to the freeze frame layer and make it a 3D layer. And now we can see we have Glaive motion tracked, but it's not motion tracked where we want, right? He's kind of just up in this spot right here, moving around. So let's go ahead and open up the transform tools. We're going to go ahead and scale him up a lot. That way he fits the size of the actual clip. And you just want to line him up as best as you can with this frame here. So it matches. The better it matches, the better overall it's going to look. So it looks like we need to scale him down a little bit. We might need to rotate him, change whatever. Yeah, so it looks like I'm going to go ahead and rotate the Z position just a little bit as well. That's looking pretty good. If you want to go ahead and use the opacity tool, you can kind of change the opacity and you can see how much off you are. But let's go ahead and make the opacity 100 and just play from the last few seconds to see if it looks decent. That's looking pretty good already to me. Let's go ahead and click this enables motion blur for all layers switch and then also add it to that freeze frame layer. That's just going to make it look a little bit more like it's there. And then when we play that, you can see there's a little bit of motion blur. You can go ahead and go up to your comp settings by going to composition, composition settings, advanced, and then changing the shutter angle. 180 is going to always give you the most realistic looking, but you can go ahead if you want more motion blur, you can bring it all the way up to 720, or you can bring it down a little bit below 180. For us, we're going to keep it right at 180 and then go ahead and change just a few last things to make it look a little bit better. I did notice that his legs were kind of like missing almost here. It goes like out of track. To fix that, I think we might just need to scale him up a little bit. That should fix our issue. Also, one thing I noticed is you can kind of see that this isn't moving behind him, right where that little gap is in his arm. So let's go ahead and go back to that pen tool and go to that. Make sure you're selected on the freeze frame layer and just mask out that part right there. And you're gonna want to go ahead and instead of add, if you go ahead and do something similar, you wanna click subtract and it should remove that. And let's also open up that mask, maybe change the feather to something like 4, and that should be good. It should make it a little bit more realistic looking. Now when you go ahead and play it, you can see the footage behind him is playing, so it kind of looks a little bit more like he's frozen in place. And then if we play that from the beginning, you can see he's kind of in focus the whole entire time. And that's one thing that you can go ahead and add some blur to kind of create that depth of field. You can see Cole did it here. It's a little bit out of focus, and then as he comes closer to the camera or the camera moves backwards, it becomes a little bit more in focus. So let's go ahead and go to our effects and presets and type in Gaussian blur. That's just going to give you a good overall blur. And then we can go ahead and make sure you apply that to the freeze frame layer and then check repeat edge pixels. And let's go ahead and make it pretty blurry at first, 15 for our case, and then go all the way to the end. And let's make it 0. And then if you click U on your keyboard there, it's going to show all the keyframes. I'm just going to bring it to the last frame and then also right click and easy ease those keyframes. And that should make it a little bit more realistic looking. Let's see how that looks once we render it out. And then once it renders out, you can see how it's a little bit out of focus here. And then it slowly becomes more in focus. And honestly, I think it was a little bit too much out of focus. So you could go ahead and change those things. It's just a bunch of different tweaking that you're going to do depending on your clip. And obviously my mask is a little rough. You can see that what really sells the effect is him doing the detail and everything. So you could even open this up, the still image in Photoshop, and mask it out a lot better. You can see how his hair detail is a lot better with a mask, and mine kind of just is a circle. So go ahead and spend the time actually masking. You can see how I messed up here, and there's just a lot better of a mask. So you could also go ahead and rotoscope out a layer and freeze frame it. There's a bunch of different techniques that you can do when masking out your subject, but just go spend the time mask because it's going to make it look a lot better. One last thing I would do is, just because the footage does have some grain on it, you can see the difference between his shirt here and his shirt here. So what I would do is just go ahead and go back in and then go ahead and use the effect add grain. Go ahead and go from preview to final output so you can see what you're working with, and then maybe just turn down the intensity just a tad, and that makes it seem like a lot more like it's actually there. And then once you go ahead and add a few more things in, you can see I have a little bit of grain. I would just spend more time masking out, tweaking the settings to make it look as realistic as possible. But that is the general concept on how to do something like this. I think it's a really cool effect that you can do in a music video, and if you plan it out properly, it can be done really well, exactly how Cole did here. So shout out to him. Obviously not the first person to do it, but he did it really well and it looks good in the music video. And a lot of people have been DMing me about this effect, so I figured I'd make a tutorial because it's pretty simple. But yeah guys, if you made it all the way to the end, like always, I do appreciate you. If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe. Do all that YouTube stuff. It really does mean a lot to me and helps grow the channel, so it is appreciated. If you wanted to support the channel, grab some packs and presets at the same time, you can check out my website. I'll have it linked down below. Follow me on all social medias. But yeah guys, that's pretty much all I got for you guys in this one. Peace.